Bruce asked me this morning to introduce our speaker, Tom Baker, and what I've been thinking about is this is a day of the resurrection. It's a day of change, metamorphosis, and what popped in is the butterfly. When the butterfly is a caterpillar and just kind of going along on that leaf, and all of a sudden it gets these urges coming to spin this thing and dissolve itself, do you think it's all joyful? And yay, I'm going to be a butterfly. Or is it going, oh shoot, I don't know what's coming? Well, I was thinking about Tom, and his story is a metamorphosis too. Because he was a very successful priest in the Catholic Church in Louisville, Kentucky. And as far as I know, then he ran across Edgar Cayce's stuff and started to go there each summer and teach, and began a metamorphosis for himself. And he wound up leaving the church. He wound up coming here to this little off-the-wall church and became the administrator of this church for a while. He's gone on and got married. You don't do that when you're a priest. So he's really living and breathing the Christ experience. And so he is the perfect one to be talking to us today about this transformation. Let's all give a warm fellowship welcome to Tom Baker.
I am Thomas. I used to be a Catholic, and I forgot my crucifix. When I was first ordained a priest, I had this idea that we would transform the parish into a very happy place. If you've ever looked out at a Catholic congregation, they're not giving that happy vibe a lot of the time. They're there to be serious. And I was there to sort of make it upbeat, give people a experience. And I remember I used to tell stories, and sometimes a joke or two, and a man stopped me afterwards. His name was Joe Caldwell. And Joe said, "Father, the Bible is not a holy book. The Bible is a holy book. It is not a funny book." But he said, "Father, you're kind of a funny man." And it was all right. So I had this idea that as the mission of our parish, our mission statement for our parish, I would say we are resurrection people and Alleluia is our song. Now, there's a fine line between the ecstatic and the silly. And it may have come across to you as a little silly. We are resurrection people, Alleluia is our song. It's a little kumbaya, you know. But it's kumbaya in the right direction. Kind of if you've got to err on one side of it, err on the side of joy rather than grimness. So I had some plans for the first Easter that I was going to celebrate as a priest. And I wanted to cover the crucifix with a big white sheet, because we had a 15-foot tall crucifix. This is a bloody dead guy every single Sunday. So you can imagine the image people had of Jesus, suffering, in pain, serious, even desperate. That image was in their minds all the time. And I thought, well, for Easter, we'll take that image out of their minds. We'll just put a big sheet over it and it all will be done. Well, my God. On Palm Sunday, I demonstrated it. You would have thought that I had called the Pope a bad name. People just thought, what? And they would say things like, I grew up with the crucifix. It's just part of the church. If you cover it up, it won't be St. Gabriel's. Won't be the same. So I said, okay, all right, fine, good, we won't do it. But we do want to have a garden. Garden. So I went out and bought plants and everything. Then I got a fountain. Started running the fountain and everything. People started getting up in the middle of Mass, go to the bathroom. Oh, the dilemma they were in. Because you weren't supposed to leave in the middle of Mass. And the bladder would fill up. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. So I created another dilemma. So by the time first Easter came, nothing changed. Crucifix was there, the fountain was turned off, and there were some nice flowers. Okay? Everybody was okay with that. Don't want too much change. The church looked like a version of Good Friday, but everybody was real dressed up and the music was upbeat. Okay. That's the best I could do. But it amazed me how many people were tied to that crucifix. And mostly for sentimental reasons. We're sentimental about death. We're sentimental about sacrifice. It's the way we've always done it. That argument was put forth also. This is the way we've always done it, Father. Don't ruin Easter for us. Okay. A footnote to Good Friday. But what drew me to the Catholic Church in the first place was not the crucifix, it was the altar, which was in the church I went to like a big table. And the priest was very progressive, and we had real wine every Sunday, and we had bread that was baked, and it wasn't the little hosts, it was the pieces of bread. And everybody got to chew communion. I mean, it was like great. Some of the older folks, they try to swallow it without chewing. You weren't supposed to chew those. You don't want to grind Christ up. Literalism and fundamentalism are just the enemies of religion and art. Just as awful. But anyway, that's what I loved. And I would sit up close to the altar and watch what the priest did. And, you could smell the wine and you could smell the bread. The bread was even a little warm. People brought it right from their house. It was wonderful. And it to me was the way Jesus really was. He was a person who was sitting down with people. He was eating with people, and crumbs were spilling on his clothes, and he had wine stains on his clothes, stuff like that. And wherever Jesus went, there was always enough to eat. There were loaves and fishes and wine, and there was Pat Robertson sitting over there in the corner saying, "I'm not going to eat any of this." No, me. No. But it was a happy place. It wasn't a solemn kind of thing. So, when I think of the Last Supper, I think of there being a kind of gustatory exclamation mark on Jesus' ministry. But the great explanation mark that I discovered about the Last Supper and about Jesus was that, and my professor in the seminary told me this, Dr. Brandon Scott, and he told me at an interesting point. Let me tell you what he told me first. Okay? That's what politicians do. You ever notice? They tell you what they're going to. They say, "Well, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you," and they never tell you. So let me tell you. Bernie Scott said, and he teared up when he said it. He said that Jesus made Judas the guest of honor at the Last Supper. Because the guest of honor was the one who sat by the host and dipped into the same bowl as the host dipped into. And that's how Jesus identified Judas at the Last Supper. Who is your betrayer? He's the one that dips into the bowl with me. Isn't that extraordinary? That says volumes about Jesus. But even when there was going to be terrible pain and terrible sorrow, he said to that person symbolically, "You are my brother. You are my dear one." That's love. That's love without question. But Judas, of course, according to Edgar Casey, wanted to take things into his own hands. He wanted Jesus to declare himself to be the Messiah and sort of take everything over. Be powerful the way the world is powerful. Remember, and we still think of this today. We're not very far from 2,000 years ago. I remember there was a man in the parish, and we were having a little class for Holy Week. And I was talking about Jesus before Pontius Pilate. And one man in the class said, "Father, how come Jesus didn't just go on and kill Pontius Pilate? It's like Donald Trump had appeared at my church." And I gave a lame answer. It was like, well, we need to have Good Friday and Easter and all that. It was sort of an ecclesiastical answer. But I thought, yeah, that's what the world would always want. That's what we want. Greater power meets power. And we solve it. We figure it out. We make it go away. We say that even today. Destroy ISIS. Kill the evildoers. All in the name of life and all in the name of love. Revenge. With revenge, it's never over. And that's the story, the sad story of the world. And Jesus changed that story. He gave us an alternate way to see. An alternate way to try to solve a problem that we have never, ever solved. Our conflict with one another. Our hatred for one another. Now, to me, the great thing Jesus did in his entire ministry, the cross was a part of that ministry. And on the cross, he said, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Now, what he did there, he didn't say, these are a lot of bad people. Look what they're doing. He said, these people are crazy. I love that interpretation from a mental health perspective. They're not bad people. They're crazy. They're out of their minds. They're delusional. Because, why are they delusional? Because they're hating. Hate is delusional. Hate is crazy. We don't have that in the DSM, in the little book we have, the diagnostic manual. We don't have hate, mental illness. You can't diagnose somebody with hate. Lots of times we just agree with them. Yeah, I hate him too. But hate is crazy. War is crazy. Grievances are crazy. Love always makes sense. Love, when it is received, will always make a difference. That's the power of the universe. And it is the demonstration of Easter. Now, there is a story that I will often tell on Easter about me forgetting my sermon. I was in front of the church, and we had no podium to hide behind in this church. You just had to stand out there and talk. And so, being a kind of absent-minded person, sometimes I'd be out there and talking, and I'd forget what I was going to say, and I would stop a minute, and I would pray. And something always came to me. Well, this Easter Sunday, it was the 11 o'clock Mass, and it was very, very crowded. This was the big show. And so, here I was out in front of everybody. People were sitting on the floor and everything. Ooh, I felt like Bernie Sanders at one of his rallies. And I was talking and talking, and all of a sudden I couldn't remember what I was going to say. It just went away. And I was there in a kind of senile funk. And in that pause, a little girl came up, and she came up onto the altar, onto the platform, and sat in the priest's chair. And she had a little basket of eggs. And I turned around, and I knew who she was. Her name was Emily. She was in the second grade, I think. And I said, Emily. And she said, Father, the Lord be with you. And we chatted. And she gave me eggs. She said, I like this blue one, or this pink one, or this yellow one, you know. And we talked back and forth. And that was Easter. There was no commentary on what Easter was supposed to be. There was no theological explanation of how Jesus rose from the dead, or why he stayed dead for 3 days and rose on the third, etc., etc., etc. There was just this little girl showing delight, and everybody felt alive and joyful. How lovely. You can't put Easter into words. You can't put joy into words. I remember Kubler-Ross used to say that E.T. was where adults came to cry. Because they recognized E.T. as themselves. But this was not their home. They were visiting here. And they came to E.T. to feel homesick and express that homesickness. I would say on Easter, you'll never hear this anywhere else, that Jesus was an E.T. He was an extraterrestrial. And we were that little boy, Elliot, or his sister, I don't remember her name. Anybody remember? Gertie. Or Elliot and Gertie. And we both looked at him and we said, yes, my brother. That's him. The Lord be with you.